From Hollywood, California, welcome to Reza Rifts with your host, Keith Reza.
I am. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
hey
It's
Mark.
me.
Hey Mark Malkoff, how are you?
Hey Keith, I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to talk. I also didn't know if you knew, and if we can talk about it or not talk about it, but no, I know that you were pals with Norm Macdonald, and I texted with him for the book, so I have some stuff about Norm in the book, about Carson, so he helped me out on the
Oh,
book.
oh
Some
yeah,
stuff.
Norm was one of my best friends, man.
No, I know. I don't. I met him a handful of times. We texted about Johnny Carson, and yeah. So if
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, if you wanted to talk about that as well, which I put in the book, I quote
Oh
him a
yeah,
couple
yeah.
times. But
Oh,
if not, no worries.
whatever you want to talk about. I thought like you had questions for Norm. I was like, oh yeah, I can answer
Oh no,
questions.
I love Norm. I love
Yeah.
Norm. No, he was
Uh,
very nice. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks.
I'm actually like a big fan of yours.
Oh, thank you so much.
I've listened to your podcast because like whenever I interview people, I like
Yeah.
look up people like
I
different interviews so I don't ask the same questions. And I've
I
listened to
do the same
yours.
thing.
Yeah, I've listened to yours so many times, and
Oh gosh.
I think
Thanks.
you're super talented. So like when we
Wow.
set this up, like I was like, oh my God, like this is like
Oh.
I'm actually an honor to talk to you,
Oh,
man.
thank you so much. No, it's great to be here, and I know you know your stuff. You've had great guests, and just the fact 9 years with Norm, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was great, man. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But no, so you went from a podcast to
yeah,
a book.
I
So
did.
so like
Yeah.
have you always wanted to write this book that's come out now, or like
No,
how that
I I didn't want to. It was just one of those things where I started a podcast. I thought it might last a couple episodes, maybe seven at the most, or eight. And I didn't realize that everybody would want to talk about Johnny Carson. I got so many big guests, and people would be like, "How do you get these huge celebrities?" I'm like, honestly, it's Johnny Carson. I just had no idea when I started that that would be the thing that would get people's attention. And it was just like routinely people would tell me they've never gotten to really talk about going on Carson in this detail. And I do lots of research. So I did it for 8 years. People were just following the journey of the Carson podcast. They were donating money to help me be able to, keep the electricity on. And back then, you couldn't really record like this remotely.
uh,
So I was going to
you'd
people's
have to
home.
go to houses, yeah.
I was going to Los Angeles. I was in homes. I was in offices. So they people were really nice to support me. And then everyone's like, "You need to do a book. You need to do a book." And then after the podcast ended, I was like, maybe I should do a book, but I'm so overwhelmed. I just can't wrap my head around doing a whole book about Carson. So I reached out to six successful authors, four of which I did not know, and I just said, would any of you who have been through this process many times be interested in working with me? And it's a gentleman named David Ritz, who I did not know, who agreed to do this. We started to talk, and David wrote Paul Schaefer's book. He wrote Don Rickles, Ray Charles. He's Willie Nelson. So he's worked with all these people, so he knows how to do this, and it really helped the process in terms of him editing my stuff down and giving suggestions and kind of talking me through stuff. So it was just, he's the one that got us the book deal. I had no idea when I reached out to him how it would work out. So David has been amazing, and that was a privilege. But that's the only reason the book happened.
How many do you remember how many like drafts did you do before you finally settled on a published book?
I think like we revised it in terms of like handing stuff to the publisher. Um, I think we waited for a while to show stuff to the publisher. I think I only showed stuff to the publisher maybe like three or four times, and then they got an outside editor to come in and just kind of take over. And he basically is like, these are my suggestions, but if you disagree with anything, let me know.
Yeah.
So I have to say, they let me do my thing. Like I contractually had to do 80,000 words, and they let me do like over 130,000 words. I mean, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get the whole story down in 80,000 words, but they gave me more time. They gave me, yeah, just more words. I was able to talk to a lot of people who would not talk to me for the podcast. I was able to get Jay Leno for 50 minutes on the phone, which really helped, I thought, for the book, and a bunch of people like that. So those 4 years I spent on the book and doing more research and more interviews. Yeah, it was definitely. If I didn't have somebody kind of talking me through the process, I felt like I wouldn't have gotten through it.
Yeah, I mean, forgive me. We'll talk more about Carson
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
I just want to
No, no, ask
know
whatever you
your
want.
I wanted to
Yeah,
know your process. Like when you were
sure.
writing, did you ever,
Yeah,
because I have a hard time listening to myself, like with other interviews. Once I record, I kind
yeah,
of don't ever listen to them again, and
sure.
I let the audience. So when you're writing a book, did you ever re-listen to any of your interviews thinking, oh,
I had
maybe,
to. I
yeah,
don't want to. I had a program that did transcription, and it was like maybe 93% accuracy, maybe 90%. So I had to listen to myself. I'm used to the sound of my voice. It's not my favorite. I don't, but I'm not one of those people where like I've been with people and they're like, "Do I sound like that?" I'm like, "I know how I sound because I'm forced to listen to myself like this." But
yeah.
I mean, just talking to so many hundreds of people, like I forgot a lot of details from talking to people. So yeah, it was, I had to go back a lot and listen to myself and listen to other podcasts and just do a lot of research. I mean, I think that's probably what I'm most known for in terms of like the people that follow my work is the research. And I say that I think that the book that's out now is maybe 30-40% the podcast at most, and the vast majority is are new details. And that's really what I wanted to do with the book. I wanted it to be new for people that listen to the podcast as well. So that was important.
That's awesome, man. I
Yeah.
I didn't know the podcast ended. Because
Yeah.
but like I don't listen to it every
Oh,
single,
sure.
But
I ran
yeah.
out of people. I ran out of people. People died on me. You know, it was like one of those things that people, when they were kids, like Drew Barrymore was a kid when she was on, and like they're all in their 50s. Like Jason Bateman was a kid on the show. So it was just one of those situations where I was just running out of people. In the last 4 years, though, I've uncovered a lot of people I didn't know that went on the show. So I've started to do some new episodes and putting up. I'm going to be putting up some new episodes on the Carson podcast feed.
I was gonna say I could have
Yeah.
sworn I got like a new
Yeah,
episode thing a couple weeks
that's
ago.
right.
So
That's
like I
right.
don't know if
Yeah.
that was like a re-release or whatever, but
No, no, it's new. It was one of those things where, yeah, I thought that some people had some really great stories to share, and I didn't know about them at the time. So, and I thought it'd be a good way to hopefully talk about the book and get the book out and remind people that it exists. I mean, there's so many options and so much noise, and I mean, I have to constantly remind myself that Johnny Carson has been off the air for 33 years. It doesn't feel that way at all. I remember watching him go off. And it's just, yeah, with the book, especially like younger people have a lot of them for YouTube. Some people really get into comedy, but overall, I probably nobody under 40 probably knows who he is for the most part.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, unless you're a stand-up comedian
Yeah,
or in the comedy, but like yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, like our children probably won't really know unless which that's very sad. But
They forget quick unless you're in constant rotation, like Seinfeld or like Lucille Ball for a long time with I Love Lucy. If there's not constant rotation, like Ellen DeGeneres, I think was probably one of the most famous people in America up until she left her show. And in a few years, there's going to be people that do not know who she is. It's like unless you stick around and you get in that rotation, they forget about you pretty quickly.
oh yeah, yeah, I've experienced that, because like all the people I toured with have passed, so like I'm kind of forgotten by clubs and stuff, you know what I mean? And I was never on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Yeah. Either.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, man. So I do have one more question about your
Sure.
writing style.
Let's
So
do
like,
it. Sure.
when you're writing the book and you're
Yeah.
re-listening to interviews on stuff you might have missed and stuff, because you out of anyone in the world, you probably know Johnny Carson the most outside his
Maybe.
family. Yeah, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
maybe.
So how did you like? Forgive me how I say this, but hopefully it
Sure,
makes
no.
sense. How did you like bullet point the stuff that you wanted to include in the book, and then how did you like eliminate stuff that you didn't want to include in the
It's a
book?
good question. There was definitely essential famous moments that I thought would be that I would need to include just for people that didn't really know much about Carson and then people that did, but only I only put the famous stuff in if there were new details that people didn't know. So like so if there's a famous clip, I have new details and reveals on it. So if I was able to do that, I would keep those in. I felt like there were certain essentials to tell the story. Yeah, just really all the big beats that I thought, I thought it was important right like when before Carson got hired to talk about that and just the whole situation where he turns down the job twice. And I really wanted to tell the whole story about Johnny's first episode on the Tonight Show. So there were just certain gaps I felt, especially within history. The first 10 years of the Tonight Show were pretty much erased. So I really wanted to tell that story, but yeah, I mean, I knew from some of the other Carson books because I've read them, the gaps where I didn't feel like certain things were covered enough. And I certainly do think that this probably is closest to the definitive Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, uh, definitive of his 30 years. I wouldn't say his life by any means, but yeah, there were definitely just I just it was probably went down to the most important stories, and then David Ritz was really good with certain things, being like, you know what, I think you can let this go because I knew I overdo it and stuff. The book is already like 400 pages, and it would have been 800 pages if David Ritz and didn't pull me back a little bit. So he helped me a lot to be maybe a little bit more objective on like maybe some of the stuff that was necessary and maybe some of the stuff that I could lose. But it was
Well,
hard. It was definitely hard. I had index cards, all over my floor and walls with like different subjects and like putting them all around in different orders on how the flow should be and like could I lose this and what do I think the audience would want to hear. So
yeah, I
yeah.
think that's so incredible because like you have so much information and so much stories
Yeah.
that you could probably write several books.
I think like this Carson thing, if I would have had my way, I don't want to say my way because that would have been tough. I probably would have been another 4 years and I probably the thing would have been
Like
yeah, like
like
War
a
and Peace
Bible.
thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but I'm happy with what we have. Like, I mean, there were very few things that we lost that I was like, oh, I really wanted that. I felt like I'm happy with how we told the story, and like it was basically if I was buying a Johnny Carson book, like what would I want to know? And that's why I started the podcast. It was just I was curious. I just had all these questions about what went on behind the scenes of Johnny Carson's show, and there was no information, really not like this. So I just started asking people questions for my own curiosity, but I had no idea that there were so many people all across America that felt as strongly as I did about the Tonight Show and Carson and were as curious as I was. And they all came along with me for the ride, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk about the podcast for a second because
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you were like an original podcaster, but you were one of the original podcasters who interviewed on a certain subject. And I think like
Yeah.
that was very fascinating. And like, when you're doing that, like did you have any idea how because your audience reach is actually pretty big and I don't know if you knew that, but like I said, I've listened to so many of
Oh,
your
that's so nice.
episodes.
Yeah, at the time I was really lucky. I started recording in 2013 and started releasing in February 2014. And it was still at the time where famous people did not have podcasts. It was at the time where you had to still had to explain a lot of times to famous people what a podcast was. Now
Yeah.
going on podcasts for famous people is like doing jury duty almost. It's like they have to do their friend's podcast and then anything else is like not usually not, they rather not be doing them. Publicists, especially, who I try to bypass when they hear podcast, it just hard no a lot of the times, unless it's huge. But there just weren't the number of podcasts, and I don't think that there was as many niche things back then as possible. I did not think that there was any advantage to me doing a Johnny Carson podcast versus a regular interview podcast with comedians. I didn't realize that that was the reason that everybody said yes to me because of Johnny Carson, where I got so many iconic people that their staff would be like they're so excited to talk to you. I'm like, why would they be excited? And then somebody like Jimmy Buffett, I was like, what, Mr. Buffett, why would you be excited to talk to me? He's like, Mark, nobody in my entire career has ever asked me about going on Johnny Carson. It was the biggest moment of my career. That and opening up for the Eagles were the biggest breaks of my life, and nobody except you has ever asked about it, and I get to talk about it. So it was a lot of those type of stories where people just were excited to talk about Carson, and I had no idea when I picked this as the subject matter that that would be the case.
Yeah, I just think that that's just so amazing, man. So,
Thank you.
congratulations, dude. And yeah, I'm really sorry. Like you're you're an idol to me. So like
Oh,
yeah, I'm like a
I'm
huge
That's
fan of
so
you.
nice. I did try to get Norm Macdonald to do it, and we emailed back and forth, and I kind of realized it probably wasn't going to happen. But then we started texting. I have some quotes from him in the book, texting about Carson, and I knew Letterman was his guy, but I didn't know that Norm really wanted to do Carson and wanted to be one of the last Carson guest. And Jim McCauley, the Carson booker, but broke Norm's
He
heart.
hated him. He hated him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Jay Leno and Jimmy Brogan that insisted that Norm come on when Jay was the guest host. And Norm annihilated. And Norm pointed out to me in one of the texts was like, and the last new person that did the Tonight Show, the last new comic, totally bombed, which is true. And for Norm to see that, and it was just like that was equally painful. But yeah, it was fun talking to him about Carson. I knew Dave Letterman was obviously his guy, but the fact that he still had a lot of questions about Johnny and we went back and forth was great.
Yeah, so like Norm, he talked about Johnny a little, but he loved Letterman, and
Yeah.
he told me that like he said that he could have went on Carson if he really really wanted to, but he said that at the end he was a Letterman guy, and he said the highlight of his career was doing Letterman's final show.
Oh yeah, oh 100%. I mean,
Yes.
definitely that his sets on Dave's show were amazing. He used to tell me when he would I knew him a little bit when he was still on Saturday Night Live and going on Conan, it was like when he would go on Dave, he was so prepared and like so, serious about it. On Conan, he would just, whatever, and just the looseness. And it was fun watching the contrasting norms on one show where he was always, I feel like, with David at least a little bit on his best behavior, whereas Conan, I mean, oh my goodness, I mean, you never knew what the guy was going to say, and that was
Yeah.
fun. Both norms were fun to watch.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, that's a shame that he didn't do your podcast. He would have had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things. I get it. I mean, they were asked to do it all the time. He said he wanted to do it in New York at one point, and I'm like, this isn't going to happen. I emailed him, and then I reached out to some other people that knew him, and it was fine. I will take a text in relationship. He was very nice when I used to go to Saturday Night Live back in the day when I was in college and in high school, and always approachable and just always great. And yeah, it was always fun to communicate with him.
One of my biggest regrets is like I interviewed Norm and when I first started this podcast, and he was like the first main big
Yeah.
guest to do it for me. And he didn't really like doing interviews on podcasts. He's like doing radio. He liked doing radio stations and stuff. But I was like, just thinking after he passed, like I really blew it because I could have interviewed him anytime I wanted to. You know what I mean? Just
You don't
any
think
time.
about it. He was so young. I tried to convince him, and this was the mistake, which I didn't realize at the time. I tried to pitch him texting to let me do a documentary on his weekend update with we had Frank Sebastiano, Jim Downey, and Ross Abrish. I thought his update was just incredible, and there was a lot of stories to be told, and I mentioned that. And he quickly texted me back and he said, I appreciate it, but and this makes sense now looking at it, but I want to be known for my stand up. I do not want to be remembered for my weekend update. I want to be for my stand up catalog. And that's when I like, what about a stand up documentary on your stand up? And then he was like, I'd be into that. And then we went back and forth. And then, I wouldn't hear from him from a couple months. And then it would be like Thanksgiving. And he's like, texts me out of the blue about a possible documentary, and then we just lost touch. But I
Well,
really would
well,
have loved to have done something with him.
well, let's keep in touch because I'm working
Yeah.
on something with
Oh, good.
Nolan North and Rob Moran, and we're trying to get Peter Farley involved for something like a documentary star feature. So like if that does get green lighted,
Yeah.
like
I hope it does.
let
Is Lori Joe working on anything? Do you know?
It's really hard for me to talk to her now because,
Oh, mm.
just by the whole thing. I do
I
text
don't really
her.
know her very well.
Yeah.
I met her a couple times, but you text with her sometimes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I text her like once every 4 or 5 months just to see how she's
Yeah.
doing. But like ever since Norm passed, it's kind of like I don't really talk to her that much. You know what I mean?
It just reminds you it's too painful because you
Very, very painful. And
I can't oh,
her
sorry.
only relationship with me is through Norm too. So like I
That's
feel
yeah.
like it's kind of brings back that stuff too. You know what I mean?
I still can't bring myself to watch Norm's final Netflix special. And all his friends talking about him afterwards, the one that he filmed at his apartment. I can't bring myself to watch it because I know that like I watch that means Norm isn't here anymore. And it's just, I don't know. I just can't watch it. I haven't been able to watch it yet.
Yeah. So yeah, man. But let's go back to your
Let's do it. Let's do
Johnny
whatever.
Carson stuff.
Sure, let's
Well,
do it.
you know, but no, man, I think that that's cool because your obsession with Johnny Carson is just like my
Yeah.
obsession with John Cusack. So like I think like that's
Yeah.
just I think that that's just incredible. And I feel like if you had an opportunity of Johnny, like I don't even know when Johnny Carson died, but I feel like if he knew about you, he would totally want to talk to you.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Johnny died in January of 2005. I remember going to Saturday Night Live when it was Norm's second year on Update, and I remember John Cusack was in the audience, and I remember going to the show.
John
Um,
Cusack?
yeah, yeah, it was John Travolta and Seal. John Travolta
Whoa.
hosted with Seal, and he was Cusack was over there with Jeremy Piven. There were a lot of famous people were there that particular night. Yeah, when that would have been the fall of 1994.
1994. I'm gonna write this down. This is cool.
Yeah, I remember Cusack getting his autograph back when people got autographs and it was still like a thing.
Yeah,
Now it's like selfies.
you have a Cusack autograph?
Yeah, but it's like he took my black Sharpie and it was like I could read the J the J, but like it's like you can't really tell it's who wrote it. But I mean, I remember because I was right there in the lobby afterwards because you
Oh,
know, yeah, I
that's
was a
very
teenager.
that's very fascinating because Norm's favorite actor was Cusack as well.
I
So
didn't
like
know that. Yeah.
it's like yeah, when we were on the road, this is gonna sound very funny, but we would watch Serendipity all the time.
Oh wow. Yeah,
So
love Molly Shannon too. So there you go.
oh yeah. So you write the book, you do the podcast.
Yeah.
Now you're doing so many podcasts as you're doing a press thing and you're going
Mhm.
on tour with a book thing, right? Like you're talking and stuff. Like how's that like for you?
It's been interesting going to I was in Chicago at their broadcasting communications museum, which was fun. They have a late night exhibit. And then I was in I thought it was called Norfolk, Nebraska, but they pronounce it Norfolk,
Yeah.
Nebraska. But I was just in there, which is Johnny's hometown, and I was in his boyhood home. So that was emotional being in Nebraska. But both of the book events have just been fun. We did one here in New York City as well. It's a lot of people that listen to my podcast, which is so nice, and that just want to say hi and meet me. And I usually do like a half hour talk and then take questions for a half hour. But yeah, it's just like I was for 4 years just working on this book and not around people that much, other than my wife Christine and my cats. So it's great to get my social skills back slowly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been definitely a great thing hearing from people that have read the book and people that knew Johnny that worked on the show that have contacted me that liked the book and I just really wanted to get this story right. I felt a big weight of responsibility to really get some of these stories that have people have gotten wrong over the years, the media's gotten wrong, and get them correct.
Yeah. So like what kind of stuff did the media, for example, get wrong that you corrected in a way?
I think like I'll give you some examples. I'll give you like one example is for sure that Johnny did not have friends, cold and aloof, a complete recluse in retirement. It's just the people I talked to Johnny's friends, and they all consistently said the same thing, which is that Johnny was almost the same person on and off the Tonight Show, almost the exact same person, a little less gregarious. And the reason that some of these people told me that Johnny might have appeared to be a little maybe cold and aloof if they said was just self-preservation because the guy was so famous that he could not walk down the street without somebody grabbing his arm, feeling they knew who he was. Mark David Chapman, who assassinated John Lennon, had a short list of people to kill if it wasn't John Lennon, and Johnny Carson was on the list. The
Oh my
FBI
God.
was routinely had to protect Carson's life. People getting past NBC security with guns and knives. So Johnny, when he was not doing the Tonight Show, when he was not around people he knew really, really well, could come off cold and aloof, but it was self-preservation. And he was one of those people that would only get to the studio maybe an hour or two before the show. He'd be working on the show all day at home, but he just would protect his energy at all costs. He knew that if he was at work all day and having lunch with people, that his energy just would not be there. So some people that might have thought in the hallway he looked cold and aloof. It was protecting his energy because, in the beginning he was doing an hour and 45 minutes. That's how long the Tonight Show was. Then it went down to 90 minutes, and then it went down to 60 minutes. But yeah, it was a lot of energy to do that show. So he guarded the energy. That was one thing I wanted to just go on the record that he had friends. The second one is Joan Rivers. It seemed like for decades, just would talk about how Johnny the feud, how Johnny never talked to her again, and she wasn't allowed to tell Johnny about her Fox show. And I really wanted to kind of talk about what actually really happened in the words of people that worked on Carson's show, people that were Miss Rivers' friends. And what happened is Barry Diller, who was the head of Fox, I sat down with him and he told me what I had heard from everyone else, which is that he told Joan Rivers, you need to tell Johnny that you're going to be competing against him. Mr. Diller was friends with Johnny Carson. They played in a poker game. It was Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Neil Simon, Carl Reiner. And Miss Rivers refused. She told Barry Diller there will be unforeseen circumstances, consequences if I tell Johnny. So I'm not going to tell Johnny. And then Miss Rivers, she tried to take Johnny's producer, Peter LaSalle, which she admitted. And all 5 talent coordinators of Johnny's show, Miss Rivers tried to steal and offered them double the salary. There were a lot of shady stuff like that was going on. And at the same time, while she was still she had already signed her deal with Fox, and she was still negotiating with Carson Productions to guest host The Tonight Show, even though she had no intention. She had already signed a deal with Fox. Johnny didn't know, but she was still negotiating to keep guest hosting The Tonight Show. So Johnny just thought it was a terrible way to do business. And for somebody that was that loyal, Johnny was so loyal to her. I mean, gave her all these breaks, made her permanent guest host of The Tonight Show, the first person ever to be permanent guest host. Her rates went through the roof when she was permanent guest host. She broke Frank Sinatra's record either in Vegas or Atlantic City for what she was getting paid. And yeah, it was just, I think Miss Rivers never got over it. And Johnny famously never talked to her again. But Johnny found out the night before the press conference from Brandon Tartikoff, the head of NBC. And Miss Rivers, when she found out that Johnny knew, panicked and called Johnny, but it was too late. There was really nothing to discuss at that point. The way that she handled it was, if she would have gone to him, people that knew Johnny said this universally, if she would have gone to him like everybody else, the competitors, say, I have an opportunity to go up against you competing show, Johnny would have said, you have my blessing. The one thing he would have told Miss Rivers, because he was always a straight shooter, he would have told her he did not think that it was a good career move because he was convinced that her style would not work every night. She was very good, Johnny thought, every 5 weeks as permanent guest host. That was fine. But she was doing all these cruel jokes on Elizabeth Taylor being fat and all these public figures. So he just didn't think that style would work. And it didn't. I mean, Miss Rivers had trouble getting guests. The show was not doing well. And Barry Diller, after like 10 months or whatever, said, either I'm firing your husband as producer or you're gone. And Miss Rivers thought Diller was bluffing. He wasn't. And Miss Rivers was removed as the host. And they brought in guest hosts such as Arsenio Hall and some other people. And Miss Rivers, then her husband, unfortunately, committed suicide. And she found out she was something like millions and millions of dollars in debt. And I give her a lot of credit. She was resilient and bounced back. I mean, it's unbelievable, like as a comedy icon for women and just her strength, what she was able to do. But she always would badmouth Johnny in the press. And Johnny didn't feel that he owed the public any explanation of what happened and didn't want to get in a he said, she said thing. So he just never mentioned her ever again on the show. It was like, not like, he's like, it's not like I'm going to get revenge. It's like, you don't exist anymore. So I thought it was important to clear that up. Johnny had this, I don't want to call it a feud, but I guess it would be some sort of a feud with Wayne Newton. I thought that was very important because Mr. Newton waited until really waited until Johnny died before he made some claims that he wouldn't have, I don't think, when Carson was alive. I mean, it's a lot easier when the person it can't sue
Defend
you.
themselves. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I thought like those are some things that I thought were maybe some of the important things that I wanted to clear up here and there. And just the fact, so many nice things that the guy did. I mean, the media made him out to be cold and aloof and no friends. And the 400 people I talked to routinely would say, I love Johnny Carson, hence the title of the book, Love Johnny Carson. And it was this whole from the people that I talked to, just this whole different person. And I thought that was important to represent. I did try to get Miss Rivers to talk to me. She would not talk to me. I tried to get Wayne Newton to talk to me. He wouldn't. And there's only one or two more people that had to have bad things to say, which I think like says a lot that I mean, it's only a handful of people. But all these other people who were so loyal to Carson, a lot of them had never really publicly talked about Johnny, but for whatever reason, they felt safe with me and they trusted me.
Yeah. Well, see that, that's another interesting thing about Carson because for comedians especially, like if you went on Carson, that could really make your career. And
Yeah.
now like the Tonight shows, I mean, I don't really want to jump in politics, but now I feel like Tonight shows don't really have that same power. You know what I mean?
It's tough. Network television, the ratings go down every year. There were three channels at one point. I mean, I think famously the people, when they look at somebody whose career catapulted the quickest, probably Freddie Prinze in 1974 or 1973, I forget. But he does the show, and within 6 months, he has the number one sitcom in America. Or it's like a top five show on NBC. It was a complete unknown. There's all these folklore myths of things that did not happen. A lot of people to this day will say, Freddie Prinze goes on Johnny Carson show, and the next day NBC offers him his own show. And it's like that did not happen. NBC did not want Freddie Prinze at all to have a show. James Comack, who's the producer of Chico and the Man, saw Freddie's tape on the Tonight Show maybe 2 weeks after he debuted, and NBC did not want this unknown person because it's a big investment. You want somebody that has more experience. And the whole thing took a while, but yeah, within 6 months, the guy had a number one show, which is unbelievable. The power of the Tonight Show. There were people that overnight did get development deals, and like George Wallace told me, he wasn't a guest on the podcast, but we talked on the phone. Told me within like 24 hours or 48 hours, he suddenly, going from playing these small clubs to like opening up for, I think he told me Natalie Cole at some
Oh my
arena
God.
or theater, and it's like very fish out of water. Like some of these people, like I thought it was really interesting. Like in 1991, Carson's last year, within like a week or two of each other, Ray Romano debuted, Drew Carey, and George Lopez, and they all got their own sitcoms. Like it's unbelievable that just the three back to back
Yeah.
debuting on Carson. So it's fun that that showcase existed. Seinfeld to this day still says that going on Carson was the biggest moment of his career, as a lot of other people do.
Yeah. Now, you might have more information. I mean, you do have more information on this because you're Mr. Johnny Carson, but I would
Mr. Johnny
argue,
Carson. Yeah.
I would argue that Arsenio Hall is probably the one guy who kind of took him down, who made his numbers fall a little. Would
I
you?
would say Johnny's numbers were always higher than Arsenio. They were different audiences that were watching the show, but it was definitely the closest, I think, to serious competition was definitely Arsenio. I
Yeah.
think that the biggest threat to Johnny, maybe not the public, was Saturday Night Live, Robert Smigel sketches when he was writing these sketches with Dana Carvey playing Johnny Carson, being very kind of old and just out of date, out of touch Johnny Carson. And those sketches Johnny did not like and felt they were mean spirited and felt that they represented him, made him look old, and he didn't want the public to feel that about him, and that was part of why he retired. But yeah, Chris Rock played Arsenio in one of those sketches, and yeah, Johnny was not happy with the writing, the Smigel's sketches, and I think that was hard. But the Arsenio thing, like I give Johnny credit because Arsenio was like the hottest thing in TV for like 2 years. And during that, I would have been tempted for Johnny to change the camera angles and make them like MTV-esque or, book like younger like musicians and stuff and try to change maybe the show or dress hipper, but he never wavered, which I thought was amazing. Like you have someone like Tony Bennett who had a lot of career, he was on top of the world and then had a lot of rough years, but he never deviated from who he was as an artist. And I think that it took a while for people to catch back up with Tony Bennett, but I think that the easy way out is just to change your style to fit what people want, and that doesn't usually work for artists. And the fact that Johnny stayed grounded in the type of entertainment and music that he wanted up until he retired and he remained number one, I think says a lot.
Yeah. So who is the hardest person you interviewed about this? And then my second question, the follow-up to that, is who is the
Sure.
easiest person to interview?
Do you mean like the hardest person to get to say yes, who is notoriously says no to things?
No, just like a hard person to interview. Like I'm sure you've interviewed
Okay.
people where you're like, oh, this guy's just
um,
not giving me anything.
you know what? I think it's probably some of the staffers that have never been interviewed before and never have done anything like that. In terms of public figures, um, I think I'm only going to say this because she had some she was open with her struggles. I was in Los Angeles with Terry Garr at her home, and I was able to edit the final thing down to like 15 minutes, but I think we recorded for maybe a half hour, and there were certain things where I could just see in her eyes she remembered, and it was like incredible just to hear her talk. But she was going through so many health challenges that some of the stuff she just didn't. It was just tough getting some answers out of her. So I wouldn't, I just didn't want to put anything out unless it made her look good. So I just edited the thing down. But that was kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
In terms of like what was easy, someone like Bob Einstein, who's just hilarious, and you just get out of his way and just let him go crazy. I mean, I was at his home twice. He was fun. Carl Reiner was another person that was effortless and easy. I was at his home twice, and then I interviewed him a third time on the podcast. It was like 33 days before he passed away by phone. I did a phoner. I didn't like doing phoners unless I had to, but
Phoners are tough.
yeah,
Phoners
they're
are
not my
very tough.
favorite. But
Yeah.
I think those maybe were seem like maybe the some of the hard Terry Garr. I think maybe just with her health stuff, but I have to say for the most part, the people that said yes to me wanted to be there and they had good attitudes. But yeah, maybe some of the people that weren't used to being interviewed. Johnny had one assistant or worked with somebody that was just tough to interview just to get answers. And I know that a lot of people emailed me, I'm so sorry, I felt so bad for you. But I'm like, no, they just, not everybody's meant to do interviews. It was nice that they said yes to me and they did the best they could. But some people just have yes and no answers sometimes, and it's just doesn't make for a good podcast. But what can you do?
Now, would you say that like Zoom, because when you were doing it, there was no Zoom, you'd either have to Skype if it was a phone or you'd go to their place. Would you say like now, like you kind of wish you had Zoom back then, because you could.
I am so grateful that I did not have that capability because I think that I definitely got responses that being in the same room with the person and like I just didn't know technically how to set up two microphones. So I only would have one microphone. I would hold it and I go back and forth. So I'd kind of have to sit near the person. And it created this like intimacy thing a little bit where we could only be a few feet away from each other. And there was like a connection with me being in the room with the people. So I thought it was really great at the time. I mean, I went all around New York City interviewing people in person, Connecticut, New Jersey, all over California. But then, yeah, there were some people like Carol Burnett that was like, it's either the phone or we're not doing it. And I'm like, you're Carol Burnett. Of course, we're going to phone it. And that was fine. But yeah, really did try to get people in person. Doc Severinsen, I was only able to get on phone twice. I really wanted to go to Tennessee, but it just didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. But that's just so cool, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like your life, you're it's just so cool. You know everything about your hero and you got to interview so many people who told you stuff that you didn't know. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
thank you. No, I appreciate it. I do want to say I really I like his work. I definitely admire a lot about his life. I mean, when he died a couple years after they found out that he, donated, I think it was $180 million to charities, which still get charities to this day get millions every year from the Carson Foundation. So I think that there were a lot of great things about this guy from doing the podcast that I found, and I really do like his work. In terms of like him being my hero, there were definitely things about him that I do not admire, that he struggled with himself. I mean, he would talk about the drinking issues on the Tonight Show. He would talk about that he would drink, like have one more too many, and he'd turn into Attila the Hun. And I do document some of those things. Those were not good. He would say, some people get fun loving when they drink, and he'd want to fight everybody. So, like in terms of that, and in terms of him putting all his relationship, all his energy into the Tonight Show, something was going to suffer, and it was his personal life. It was his marriages and his relationship with his kids. So there's definitely things about him that I do not admire. But I do understand, and somebody that knew him very well that worked with him said that, and this is probably true. There's no way the guy could have lasted 30 years at number one if he didn't put the energy entirely into his show. I mean, something was going to suffer.
Yeah. All right, man. So I got three more questions. I want to respect your time, but these
Oh,
questions,
good. This is fun. Sure.
yeah, these questions aren't really about your work or whatever. These are just about
Okay.
you
Sure.
spiritually. So I
Sure.
wanted to ask you, Mark, if you
Yeah.
were an ice cream flavor, like a Ben and Jerry's
Yeah.
flavor, and
Hmm.
you could call yourself whatever you want, what would you call yourself?
Oh goodness, I don't know. One of my best jobs I ever did was scooping ice cream in Evanston, Illinois, on the campus of Northwestern. I didn't go to Northwestern, but I was there for a summer. In college. Marky Mark. I'm trying to think. Marky Mint. Trying to think. I like cookie dough a lot. Something with a play on Marky Mark. But I'd think about it. I don't know. Or Malk. Malcoco. I don't know. I have to think about it, but yeah, maybe something with cookie dough if I can work that in with rhymes with Mark Malkoff or something like that.
That'd be
I do
cool,
like the ice cream.
like a cookie dough Mark or
I'll go. Sure. There
you
we
know,
go.
cookie dough
Yeah.
Mark. So if you could go into a time machine and talk to a younger
Uh,
version of yourself, knowing everything you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I think like how old would I be at the time?
Whatever you want. Could be from yesterday, could be from when you were 8.
I think like if I went back to like a younger Mark Malkoff when I was still like in high school or elementary school, that I would say that everything's going to be okay. Don't worry so much. Like, you're going to be able to do things that you want to do, like your dreams, and just yeah, don't. I think I just had so much anxiety. I still struggle with anxiety and depression. I think I probably would have told my younger self to get help, maybe with depression, because I had it back then, but I didn't really know, um, didn't really do much about it or anything. And I think maybe something with that, get some help, maybe for depression issues. Because I just thought that I was just sad a lot, and that was just, I don't know, just how it was. And yeah, we all struggle with things like that. But I think maybe some of those things would be just don't worry, and maybe just get maybe some help on some depression stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I have depression, and the thing that helps me because I'm also on the spectrum. So like the thing that really helps me is stand-up comedy really saved my life. You know what I mean? So
That's
like,
fantastic. Yeah, yeah,
so I feel that, whenever people say, "Oh, you're an inspiration to the autism community," I don't feel I am because I feel
yeah.
if people loved kind of like how you love Carson, like
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
love comedy that same way,
right.
where it's like I feel if someone else loved comedy, they could go to speech therapy, they could,
Mhm.
do, like I've done some stuff I'm proud of, but I'm also not successful as I want to be. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think success is relative. I think I struggle with that sometimes, just not being where I want to be necessarily. And but then again, I know people that are like famous that aren't happy where they want to be. It's tough sometimes, but I just think that all we can do is be our best person, and like that's great that you're able to use your gifts and be able to make people laugh and encourage people. I think that's a wonderful thing. I do think that there are a lot of people that have these gifts or things, and that they just aren't, for whatever reason, and that's fine, if that's their decision, but they just kind of like don't do anything with it. I mean, I've seen so much wasted talent, and that's okay. Like, if people don't want to use it, I guess, or they want to focus on other areas, I get it. Sometimes I feel like people like myself, the way I'm wired, I think I get maybe a little bit too obsessed career wise and stuff, where I wish I could pull it back a little bit. But I do notice that I've met so many people that have very unique gifts that just don't seem interested in using them or exploring them. And I think that sometimes to me, from an outsider's point of view, I think that that is unfortunate.
Yeah. And then my last question for you, Mark, is if you could go back and you were on the Tonight Show with
Oh
Johnny Carson,
gosh.
and Johnny Carson gave you the hey, okay, come to the couch. And
Yeah.
I know he didn't like talking off the camera, but let's
Yeah.
just say he did.
Sure.
What would you talk to Johnny about?
Oh my goodness, I would have to have something prepared. Yeah, the reason he didn't like to talk to people during the commercials because he liked to keep things spontaneous for the show and like to keep up his energy. Um, I don't know. I feel like Stephen Wright was really fun. Like only I think 15 people that I can think of, maybe a few more were called over in 30 years to the couch. Stephen Wright was getting laughs just being nervous. I thought that was funny. I don't know. I haven't done stand up in so many years that I'd have to think about something to talk about. I'm thinking about maybe starting back up. How often do you get on stage?
You should
How
definitely.
often do you get up normally? Yeah.
I mean, right now,
Yeah.
if I'm lucky, 3 or 4 times a week.
That's
If
great. Where do you go up normally?
just whatever,
That's great.
I try to hit the Laugh Factory in Long Beach, and I mean, right now I tour with TJ Miller, so
Wonderful. Yeah, that
I
you can
do
get those.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't, when I was with Norm, dude, I would go on, 12 sets a week. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So like so that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like I've kind of, maybe it's a decline or whatever. But then when Norm passed, Saget took me. So, it was just kind of,
Oh. Yeah, he was another sweet guy. I love talking to him.
oh yeah, Saget was the best.
Mhm.
And it's so like that's why I think you should go back into stand up, because I think you're a
Yeah.
great storyteller. And I think that,
Yeah.
now, you
Yeah.
could just
Can I
you
ask you a question about stand up? Is that okay? Can I
uh,
take hijack your show?
of course. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna ask because it's like I was talking to somebody who's a stand-up and they were encouraging me to do stand-up, and it's been so many years. I was just gonna maybe do open mics for like I don't know, at least like a year and just to try to get myself back before I got in front of a regular audience. But do you think that that's too much? The person I talked to though that told me that she thought I maybe should just do that for like a month and then get in front of audiences. What do you think?
Well, do you still remember your jokes when you did it, or
It was so long ago. I would have to rewrite. I mean, I've been reworking on a new act and stuff to update it and stuff. So, um, I don't know. I just getting stage time seems scary to me, but there's never been more clubs here than New York in terms of opportunities. But then again, there's so many comics. Is it hard to get stage time in LA? I'm guessing it is.
oh yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
I think you should just do it for, I think a year is too much. I think maybe one
Uh,
month or 2 month, because you
uh,
have stand-up experience. You know how to do it.
it's been quite a while. I'm
But
scared out of my mind, but maybe that's a
it's
good
like
thing.
riding a bike. You still know
Yeah.
how to do it. So like I don't think
We'll see.
you need that much open mic time. I think you just need
Yeah.
to, just 3 or 4 mics and then just jump into
Okay.
it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
when it's been a while. When I used to do stand up, and this was a long time ago, I was still had I would hyperventilate in front of audiences. I would get lots of just anxiety. My hands would shake, and I'm a lot more comfortable on stage now, and I don't have that. Thank goodness, have that happen anymore. So
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
that
I'm in a
happens to
better
me a lot too.
headspace.
Yeah.
I think I'm in a better headspace to get up and hopefully do stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I appreciate the encouragement, and thanks for letting me take over your podcast for a little bit. Back to you, Keith.
Yeah, no, man. So yeah, I just want to say, where can the folks at home follow you? The book is out. Are you doing like a audio thing where you read the
Yeah, I
book?
couldn't believe that that was nerve-wracking too. I did the audiobook over 5 days and then we did a couple hours of pickups. But yeah, they asked me like people around America were like, who is narrating your audiobook? This was like 2 months before the book came out, and I said, I have no idea. And then the publisher asked me if I'd do it, maybe like I don't know, like was it like 6 or 7 weeks before the book came out? And I was like, okay. I tried to yes and it. I tried to do the improv yes and into scary things that I think might be good for me. But like my director for the audiobook did Oprah's audiobook, Elvis Costello, like so many famous people like Bono, all
And
these
now
people. So
yours.
I know. That's why I was like so scared out of my mind. I'm like, I just like I'm like I know I'm in good hands, but at the same time it's like terrifying. But I think after like a day or so, I got into it a little bit. So I think people hopefully will like that. They can get that at Audible. The book's available Amazon here in New York City at Astoria Bookshop, AstoriaBookshop.com, I think is the site. There's signed books for sale. I went over and autographed some stuff. So yeah, markmalkoff.com, social handles and stuff. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'd love to keep going around the country talking about Carson and the book and all of that, but people have been so nice, such as yourself. So yeah, really, really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this because like I'm being sincere. Yeah, I really do look up to you when I
Oh,
do
thank you.
interviews and stuff because I listen, and the thing that I do like about your interviews is even though it's just reflected on Carson, you never really
Sure.
ask the same question. Like when
That
you
I tried that. That was one thing I wanted. I didn't want to ask the same cookie cutter questions that a lot of these people get. I remember being with one famous person, and afterwards, their people were like, "We have never had an interview like this. This person has always asked the same questions every time." And I was like, "Good, okay, I'm doing my job. This was good."
yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I think that's what we all are trying to do. People's time's valuable, and it's like, just try to like maybe talk about stuff they don't normally do, and just be curious and try to be the most curious person possible and
Yeah.
respectful.
Well, we're friends now, so whenever you're in LA,
Yeah,
man, and
I,
let's do some shows
for sure.
together.
I'd
All
love
right.
that. I'd absolutely love that. Thanks, Keith.
All right, Mark. Well, have a good day.
You
And
too.
Rifters, that was a show. Buy the book. It's called Love Johnny Carson. And follow Mark and listen to some of his old episodes. You also have a new podcast now, right?
Yeah,
Called
it's called Inside Late Night is part of latenighter.com. Latenighter.com is past and present late night. So I talked to a lot of people from Saturday Night Live and Letterman and different shows about their late night experiences, writing, doing stand up, and yeah, being
ah,
on the show. So yeah, it's been fun.
I think I'm going to jump on board on that one. I just found out about that podcast a couple days ago. So where you posted a interview with Chris Kattan. I was like, "What? You have another one?" So
I did. I recorded with him remotely. He was in Los Angeles. I was in New York. And then in Nebraska, of all places, 2 weeks later, I ran into him at my hotel parking lot. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, Chris, I just interviewed you. And I don't think he knew who I was, but I couldn't tell. But he did a photo together. But yeah, but I just interviewed him. Yeah.
yeah, so like you want to hear a little Norm juicy scoop before
Sure.
we leave.
Absolutely.
So I got a job to open up for Chris Kattan once,
Yeah.
and I told Norm, and Norm told me, he's like, "You better not take that fucking gig if you want to talk to me ever again." I was like, "What? What's
Oh,
going
wow.
on?" Yeah. So I canceled the gig, and then like 3 years later, I was like, he was asking me who's coming on Reza Rifts because Norm was a big supporter of Reza Rifts. I was like, I'm thinking about asking Chris Kattan. He's like, you better not fucking ask Chris Kattan. So then I find out early, like, that they had like a huge beef. And Norm
Yeah.
never told me what it was, but it was so
Yeah.
bad that, if I interviewed him or opened up for
Hmm.
him, it would have really risked my friendship. And I thought that was
Yeah.
just kind of crazy.
I
So
did ask Chris Kattan about that. I asked him about the norm stuff, and he kind of deflected a little bit. There at one point, I did ask about because Chris Kattan had told this story a bit that Norm, I guess they were on an airplane together. Norm had taken Kattan's sneakers and Catan, I guess, took a nap or something and woke up and his sneakers were gone. And Norm's like, I don't know where they are. And Catan had to walk through the airport without any shoes on. And then I guess later Norm gave them back, but then Norm held, or Catan held Norm's black leather jacket, which was like Norm's Linus blanket, hostage at Saturday Night Live. And I asked Catan about how long he held the jacket hostage, and it was like he said only like an hour or so because I know that the way Catan said it, Lori Joe called and said Norm needs his jacket back, please. And Catan said, this is between Lori Joe, this is between me and Norm, not you. And but yeah, but Catan deflected that.
yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing. It did seem that there was a thing with the two of them. I Catan also, I said Norm hosts Saturday Night Live. He comes back and he hosts the show, and you're not in the show at all. You're not at good nights, and he kind of deflected on that too. But he was very nice. But it seemed to me that yeah, there might have been something going on.
Yeah, well, so I mean, the thing is, Norm's gone, so maybe I could interview him now. I don't know. I could really get down to this scoop.
I don't know. It's yeah, Norm was such a special guy, special comic, always very nice to me. But that's interesting with the Catan stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's been like, it's Norm's been gone for a couple years now, and I think the Catan, I think, probably just chooses to maybe focus more on the positive things with him. But yeah, when Norm went back to host Saturday Night Live, I thought it was amazing. There were a bunch of writers over there that were so upset at him for his monologue, where he says, "I haven't gotten any funnier. The show's just gotten really bad." So, I mean, I'm funnier compared to, well, you'll see a little later. Okay, we got a bad show for you. Dr. Dre and Eminem are here. So yeah, there were a bunch of
monologue. I mean, it was
nobody would go up to Norm at good nights. None of the cast members went up to Norm at good nights. And I've talked to, I can't mention who they are, but there are writers at SNL that were really upset with Norm. And Robert Smigel helped out a little bit on that monologue. And there were some people over there that were not happy with Robert for helping, but it was more like Norm calling Robert in just to be like bouncing off the ideas and stuff that he was doing and stuff. I mean, that was pretty much Norm, that monologue. But the fact that people over there couldn't laugh at that, and I mean, I'm sure some did, but the fact that there were writers that were upset and they booed him, there were writers that booed the monologue. You can hear booing. It just, that's, I think I don't know. I think that's a shame. Yeah, I think
I'm gonna
that's
rewatch that.
Insecure people that they needed to boo Norm, and just the fact that they were upset with him. I mean, I thought that was ridiculous.
I'll tell you this: Norm didn't give a fuck.
I will say this: those people, if I was at a party with the people I know that had a problem with Norm, they would all. My strong guess is they would all deny it to my face that they had a problem with it, and I know for a fact that they did. But I don't think any of them would admit it because it probably does not make them look good. There is one writer I talked to, actually, I do admire, T-Shawn Shannon, that I had on Inside Late Night. He told me he did think it was a bad thing what Norm did. He didn't like it. And I give him credit for telling me. I didn't know he was one of them, but I still just have a different take on the whole thing. But you're in somebody's home, and it's like, he's in SNL's home for him to insult the show. But at the same time, I just thought it was really funny, and it's Norm, and that's what he does. So,
well, Mark, this was an honor, man.
Hey, thank you. This was so much fun. I'm grateful to you.
Yeah, definitely. And have a good day, and we'll talk soon.
You too. We'll talk. Take care.
All right, guys.
Be good.
See you next week, Rifters.